Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to ask everybody to take their seats. I'd like to ask the board members to come up here and assume their seats as well. Great crowd on hand today. We must be giving something away up here, huh? It's good to see everyone. What appears to be a double chin is just the shadows for me. My name is John Hancock, and I'm a lifelong St. Louisan. I was born here. I will die here. I love St. Louis. And 23 years ago, I was on a special committee of the State House of Representatives examining the county offices in the city of St. Louis, and that they really were duplicative and they really were wasteful, and we couldn't reach a consensus 23 years ago. And in those 23 years, we've seen a lot of cities in this country do very well. We've seen the phenomenal growth in Atlanta, the amazing things that have happened in Indianapolis, Columbus, Ohio, having a burgeoning economy. We need that kind of growth, that kind of vibrancy in St. Louis. And I'm delighted to be here today because I believe that the work that's going to be done here can put St. Louis on a track to have historic growth and the highest highs in our history. So I thank you for coming. I'm going to introduce you now to a man with whom I don't always agree. But he is one of my dearest friends, and he is a great St. Louisan. Please welcome Michael Kelly.
Okay. Thank you. I'm honored to be here with my pal John, and if you listen to us, we rarely agree on anything, including what day of the week it is. But we are both from St. Louis. We both care about this place and this region and what it can be, hopefully, in the decades to come. And we believe that this process is the start of addressing some of that. So we're honored to be here as we launch Better Together. We have some distinguished participants who have been unveiling this new endeavor in just a bit. But first, I want to take a minute to recognize some of our guests in attendance. Guests who, by their virtue of their attendance, today underscored the magnitude of this undertaking, both in its importance and its depth and breadth of support. On behalf of the Better Together board members who are seated to my right, we thank you one and all for being here. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce the Better Together board members themselves, some of whom are too modest to be singled out. But if you would all stand together, I'd like to acknowledge you. Ambassador George Herbert Burt Walker, Donna Wilkinson, Nancy Rice, Bill Rusnick, Rachel Keller Brown, Tom Irwin, the Mayor of the City of St. Louis, Francis Slay, the County Executive of St. Louis County, Charlie Dooley, George Roman, Maria Taxman, Dr. Benjamin Akande, Jim Buford, Kathy Osborne, Joe Reagan, Jeff Abusi, and Mark Brandom. All of these people are behind this effort and have donated their time, energy, and resources to helping make the launch of this Better Together successful as we move forward. And now it is my great honor to introduce the Better Together Board Chairman, Ambassador George Herbert Burt Walker III, a man whose roots here in St. Louis are probably rivaled by no one. His great-grandfather settled in St. Louis in 1857. Ambassador Walker's accolades and achievements are numerous. He has served, of course, as the ambassador to Hungary. Have a seat, Ambassador. I'll be with you in a second. He served as ambassador to Hungary from 2003 to 2006, and he and his wife, Carol, just recently returned from a trip to Hungary. As an investment executive by profession, Ambassador Walker served as chairman of G.H. Walker Laird before joining Stiefel Nicholas Company, where he went on to become president and chief officer of and chairman, and now chairman emeritus. His interests have extended into education, politics, and civic affairs. He is currently the chairman emeritus of the board of Webster University and has served on that board since 1974. He has been both very politically active, regionally, nationally, serving as the state finance chairmen for President Nixon and Reagan, and was very involved in his cousin, former President George Herbert Walker Bush's presidential campaigns in both 1988 and 1992. A true statesman and a person who makes St. Louis a better place, Ambassador Burt Walker.
Mike, thank you very much. A little longer than I think needed to be, but nevertheless, we appreciate very much, and it's great to have you and John here, and we all enjoy listening to you so often on KMOX. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm so pleased and truly excited to be here this afternoon and looking out on so many notable business and civic leaders, many of whom I have the privilege of calling personal friends. And I know these friends have shared the same commitment that I have to the advancement and betterment of our beloved St. Louis. And whether you live in the city or in the county, we all share the common bond of proudly calling ourselves St. Louisans. This day has been long in the making. To give you a little and perhaps somewhat personal history, in 1992, the then newly elected mayor of St. Louis, Freeman Bosley, invited me to form a blue ribbon advisory committee to guide him on budget and finance issues. Upon finding that the mayor had little control over budget and finance issues due to the restrictions written under the Missouri State Constitution, I think you know something about that, Mayor Slay, the restrictions on the power of the mayor and city, we modified the mission and we became Citizens for Home Rule, which, as many of you may remember, was an effort to amend the state constitution so that voters in the city of St. Louis would be given the authority to change the city charter, a right that has been denied them since the Missouri Constitution was written in 1876. I am truly delighted to have been part of the successful statewide ballot measure that corrected that wrong in November 2000 when Home Rule was passed by a statewide vote. And I think that was a considerable advancement for the city of St. Louis. Today I stand before you privileged to be leading this effort to address another issue that truly affects us all. Since St. Louis city residents voted to break away from the county 137 years ago, there have been ongoing debates about bringing the region back together again. While most discussions have simmered below the surface, there have been formalized efforts to reunify the region once in 1936 and again in 1962, and as you all know, each time they went down to failure. To give some perspective, the last time a serious effort was put forth to somehow reunify the city and county, John F. Kennedy was president, the arch had not been built yet, Neil Armstrong had not yet walked on the moon. And yet folks talk about it all the time. Those of us who are passionate about this issue have often asked the question, why is it that the study and research and data necessary to craft a formal plan or even to have an informed opinion has not been gathered and does not exist? And that is exactly what we are doing leading here today, an effort to gather data that will be pertinent to this issue. And so we are excited to be launching this effort this morning. Please be absolutely clear, however, on this matter. The organization that we are advocating today is not favoring reentry or merger. Rather, the time has come to gather together information and that can effectively present options and proposals to the people of the city and the county. And I can't tell you how important that is. We are not advocating reentry. We are not advocating merger. We are just saying, let's get all the data together and then as a group decide what is best for St. Louis and the St. Louis region at this time. To that end, through the Missouri Council for a Better Economy, we decided to start the project that we are calling, as you all know, Better Together. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Nancy Rice, our very able colleague who has worked so hard on this issue and so effectively, Nancy. I can't say enough about the work that you have done, and Nancy recently led the local control effort that allowed St. Louis to gain control of its police force, and who is now serving as our executive director of Better Together, and who I know is excited to tell you about our organization and what we are seeking to do. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bert. First, I want to thank Bert and the whole board for allowing me to work on this project. It's already been hard work. I think it's going to be harder, but it's terribly exciting, and I think that based on the response that we're hearing from people, it's very important. So I want to just thank all of you for this opportunity. Bert mentioned that I worked on the local control. Can everybody hear all right? That I worked on the local control campaign. And during that time period, we ran the kind of campaign where we went around and we asked people for their support. We didn't run a big media campaign. And during that time, so I had all these civic discussions with people all over the St. Louis region as we were asking them to support our proposition. And they'd say, well, that's great, yeah, I'll be for that. Why aren't you working on city-county merger? Why aren't you? So it kind of was looking around at it. And to underscore Bert's point, we came to the conclusion that there's not a lot of information that will help people write a good proposal, and that most importantly will help voters evaluate a proposal. So if you start thinking about this and drilling all the way down, these governments that we have in St. Louis are here to provide municipal services. And we have a lot of governments doing that, ladies and gentlemen. In St. Louis City and County, we have 1.3 million residents. Those 1.3 million residents share 116 governments. That doesn't count schools or sewers or arts commissions or transportation sub-districts. That's 93 municipalities, 23 fire districts, St. Louis City and St. Louis County. It's a lot of government. Rather than look at those things systemically as whether it makes sense on the surface, we decided to examine how those governments who are charged with providing us municipal services, how they were doing. So we are going to have what we're calling a community-based study. And what we mean by that is we will have subject matter experts help us as we look at it, but we will have sponsored discussions and forums and meetings, and we have Twitter and Facebook and everything that you can think of in terms of ways of reaching out to people we intend to employ. And what we will employ those as we look at 6 subjects. We're looking at, first, public finance. Who owes money? Where do they owe it? Who's liable for it? How's it securitized? What are the revenue streams? We're just gonna pull them all together and write them down on a list so that somebody can look at that list when they're trying to design a government in 2015, if it goes that way. The second thing we will look at is economic development. The next one we will look at is public health. Following that will be public safety. Following public safety, we'll look at parks, recreation, and infrastructure. And finally, we'll conclude with general administration. We will do these sequentially, not all at one time. And in each area, we're going to ask 4 questions, ask and answer. What is the current status? How do we deliver firefighting today? Second, what is considered to be best practices? Whether those best practices are designed by come from subject matter experts at university or from insurance institutes or wherever the places that things have been looked at. We're going to employ those and answer the third question, which is where we will compare what we do to best practices. And then the fourth question will be, what are scenarios for going forward? What might something different look like? And we will do that in each area. Now, some respects, this may seem a little tedious, and I think it is. I've even joked that this is the year where St. Louis eats its vegetables, you know, where we have to do some hard work before we can get to the prize, whatever the prize is. But I would remind people that we have now pulled together the budgets for those 116 governments, and we're spending over $2 billion with a B dollars a year on those 116 governments. And I think you'd have to argue there's not a business person that we know that would spend $2 billion on something and not occasionally take a look to see if they're getting their money's worth, if there's a better way, if they can provide a better service, if they can reduce the cost. So that's what we're going to be doing. You're going to hear from us a lot. I would encourage everybody in this room to encourage everybody you know to go to our website, sign up, so that you can get tweets and text messages and emails from us as we turn over information. We intend to make our website the most transparent and accessible website that you all have ever seen, so that if you want to know what the equipment list is on the Monarch Fire Department, if we know, you can know. It'll be accessible to you. So that's really all I have. I thank you all for coming, and I hope that you'll all join us on what promises to be a great adventure. Thank you.
It's now my honor to invite Mayor Slade to come forward and give us his thoughts on this subject.
Thank you so much, Bert. Thank you. Thank you, Bert. Well, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you all for joining us here today for this launch of this most important regional effort. And I hope this is not the last time that I see anybody in this room again, because your involvement is going to be very, very important. We have a very quality board here, but the entire effort here will not be successful without significant support and involvement of the community, both in St. Louis City and in St. Louis County. You know, I'm standing here at the Cheshire Inn, and I can't tell you, although somebody probably can, whether I'm in the city or I'm in the county. And that's a good thing, because it really doesn't matter. You know, the Cheshire Inn straddles the city and the county, but if you stay at the hotel and you want to run over and get a cup of coffee, you know, the visitor here doesn't think about crossing the line into the city. But the line does exist, and many others lines exist as well. Some make sense, many of those do not, and that's kind of what this effort's about. All of them together cost us a lot of money and in taxes, and they don't mean that much to most people, except in many cases to the political class whom they empower. What people do care about are good jobs, good schools for their children, safe neighborhoods, convenient and affordable transportation, and healthy families. These are what is important to the people of St. Louis City and St. Louis County. People want local government that works for them, that solves their problems, that doesn't make things worse, and at a cost that they can afford. But all those lines make things harder. They make it harder to compete in a global economy and create good careers to keep our kids and grandkids in St. Louis. Some of our government structures were organized for reasons that were outdated 100 years ago. For example, at the start of the Civil War, the state of Missouri took over the St. Louis Police Department so it would not be used on behalf of the Union against the Confederacy. We just fixed that a couple of months ago. Similarly, 2 months after Custer's last stand, voters in the city of St. Louis decided to leave St. Louis County. We are still living as a region with the consequences of that decision today. On the other hand, we've done some really smart things together. We have a lot to be proud of with some great results. The Zoo, the Metrolink, MSD, and more recently, the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership and City Arch River are successful partnerships between the city and the county. So we now embark on a 16-month endeavor to determine what is next. It's been a long goal of mine, there's no secret about this, to reunify the city and the county. But we are not prejudging anything in the process here. The studies, the research, and public input will determine what we will do next and what we can do that's smarter and better together. And most importantly, what the people of the city and the county are willing to support. What the people of the city and the county are willing to support, not what we decide what is best. And it's about time, and this is the right place to start. Thank you for joining us.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for those excellent remarks. Very pertinent and terrific. And now it's a great pleasure to introduce my friend, the very distinguished County Executive, Mr. Charles Dooley. Charlie, welcome.
Now, let me say good afternoon to all of you. I'm extremely happy to be here for a host of reasons. First, with my good friend, Mayor Francis Slay, and the extinguished board. It is always good to be with my good friend, Mayor Slay. We do a lot of things that I think is important to this region as we move forward. Let me make this statement, a couple of sentences here, then I'm going to expound on that. There have been a number of conversations in a lot of different quarters about the city-county cooperation and other issues. One of the things that's missing from the conversation is data. This initiative will gather important data in 6 key areas. That data can be used to inform the thinking of others who want to make recommendations or join this particular conversation. Now, that being said, let me qualify this. First of all, I've said this on many different occasions. If you live in town and country, Northwoods, Florissant, it makes no difference. When you leave the St. Louis region, people will tell you you're from St. Louis. That is a fact. The mayor indicated about the things we do in cooperation right now. We talked about the partnership, the economic partnership. We talked about MSD, Proposition P. These are things that move our community forward in a very positive way, creating jobs and opportunity. Even more importantly, the mayor and I talked about the immigration reform, why it is so important for St. Louis to grow. We don't grow individually, we grow collectively as we move forward. But one of the things that was said this morning I think is really crystal clear. This is not about unifying the city and the county. This is not about the city re-entering the county. This is about information. Information. That's the key. Information. What do we do with it is beyond my expectation. I don't know. But I will tell you this. Mayor Slay and County Executive Dooley can't make any decisions about this region without the vote of the people of this region. That is going to be the key factor. I've said this on many occasions. I say, Charlie, how can the city and county begin to cooperate more efficiently? I've always said this. At the end of the day, the business community, the nonprofit gets it. But how does it affect the people behind the doors? That's the key component. Information. That's going to be the ultimate goal, is informing people. I would believe an informed voter will do the right thing, wherever that might be. But we need people to be informed. This initiative is about gathering information about our region so we can make important decisions in the 21st century. As you indicated earlier, and Mayor Slay said, this is a global competition. It's not just us involved in this. It is all of us. It's not just a region or a state. It is a global, it's a world competition. We want to put our best foot forward. And the best way to start doing that is gathering the information and utilizing and leveraging that information to the region's best opportunity. So that's where I'm at with this situation. I look forward to gathering this information. Again, I believe when we work together, we do great things. Thank you.
We are all St. Louisans, and we are all proud St. Louisans. I make my career disagreeing with people, and we as St. Louisans often disagree as well. But I've learned a little something working with my partner, and that is dialogue is always good. Talk, understanding, information, always helpful. The work that's going to take place here over the next 16 months is somewhat dependent on these people behind me, but it's also dependent on all of us. A community conversation coming together to talk about a brighter future for St. Louis, and on that, we can all agree. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Kelly.
So, first, I think we should thank Ambassador Walker. The reality is that he was the impetus behind getting this process started. We all know his lengthy bio and the dedication he's given to our country, and more importantly, to the St. Louis area. And it's a credit to him that we've launched this today. So thank you, Ambassador. In addition, we want to thank Nancy Rice, who's spearheaded this and who will be quarterbacking this process as we move forward, as well as both Mayor Slay and County Executive Dooley for being here today. If you take away one thing about Better Together STL, it's this. This is not Francis Slay or Charlie Dooley's process. This is not a city or a county issue. It's not a Democrat or a Republican, a black or a white, a worker or a CEO issue. This is our opportunity to participate in the process. Everyone, whether you're riding a bus to your job in St. Louis County or you're driving down Highway 40 into one of the big businesses in downtown, this is your opportunity to participate in the process, understand what we can find together to move St. Louis forward. Now, again, I want to thank our entire board for participating today. We want to thank you all for coming. There's going to be an opportunity for a couple of questions to our panelists that are here this afternoon. And for the media, there'll be opportunities for one-on-one with our board folks at the conclusion of this program. So with that, I'd like to open it to a couple of questions, and I believe Brooke Foster is here to accommodate anyone who might have a question for Nancy Rice or any of her team. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I was glad to hear Nancy Rice mention education, and I think it should have been one of your 6 concentrates. I do appreciate that evidently there has been some thought about education, since education touches everyone in the St. Louis region, and there's so many school districts surrounding St. Louis, and that affects every resident of St. Louis and St. Louis County when it comes to taxes. And my question would be, is there any consideration later on to look at those school districts, especially if you're talking about county and city partnerships? What about the school districts?
That's a great question, and you're certainly not the first person to ask it. Reluctantly, we have excluded education from this study, and I think that probably most people here know why. I mean, if we think talking about how we fight fires is going to be explosive from time to time, we're going to stay with the fire analogy, it's going to be explosive from time to time, we have to recognize that education could bog us down. The other thing, though, very narrowly, sir, education is provided by different political subdivisions. At the end of the day, when we talk about or look at St. Louis City rejoining St. Louis County, we're talking about municipal government and those services. And there's a whole different political infrastructure, different place in the Constitution, different in every way, that brings us public education. And so from that perspective, it doesn't fit. From the perspective of what kind of region we have, it absolutely fits. And I think we all hope that this effort or others will inspire a good look at how we provide public education.
Any other questions right here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, in this study, I guess we can look on your website on the study. Would it include police, judiciary, what is in and what is not, and why?
The answer is yes. If it's a service that's provided by St. Louis City, St. Louis County, one of 23 fire districts or 93 municipalities, it will be part of the study. And so police certainly fall into that category, absolutely. So that would, the criteria of whether it's provided by those governments is how we determine what's in and out.
There's a brochure that will be at the back, and it explains the 6 different categories and how this process is going to move forward. We encourage you to go to our website, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, Better Together STL. Thank you for coming, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.